Hello and welcome to the explanation for Boo Bubbles. We will first start with pre-K through 3rd grade students. You can explain to these students that dry ice is solid carbon dioxide and it is very cold. When it's mixed with hot water that we have here, it forms a smoke that pours out. When this smoke is used to make a bubble, it falls to the floor because carbon dioxide weighs more than oxygen. Bubbles are made up of 3 layers, with 2 layers being the soap layers, with the water layer in the middle. The bubble takes the shape of a sphere because it's the shape that has the smallest surface area. It's important when you give the bubbles to these kids that they're wearing gloves or a sock that they can put over their hand so they can hold the bubble in their hands. If you don't have the glove, the bubbles will pop when it comes into contact with your hand. The pop of the bubble releases the smoke. We will now talk about 4th through 6th grade students. You can explain to these students that different gases have different weights. Here we have a carbon dioxide gas, and here we have an oxygen gas. When the bubble is filled with carbon dioxide gas, it floats down because it's heavy. A normal bubble that has oxygen in it will float up. Dry ice is made up of solid carbon dioxide that sublimates when it's exposed to any temperature above its freezing point. In this experiment, hot water is used because if it wasn't hot, it would freeze the water around it. As explained before, a bubble has 3 layers, 2 soap layers with the water layer trapped in the middle. You should be giving your student gloves or socks that they can put over their hands so they can hold the bubble without it popping. Once the bubble pops, the carbon dioxide gas cools the water vapor in the air and creates that white smoke. We will now talk about middle school students. You can explain to these middle school students that gases have different weights, that carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen. Carbon dioxide is made by putting dry ice into hot water. This is a process called sublimation, when the dry ice goes directly from a solid, skips the liquid phase, and becomes a gas. As stated before, when the bubble pops, a white smoke is released. It allows the water molecules to be attracted to each other and form a cloud. When explaining the bubble, we already know that there is 3 layers. In our soap layer, we have soap molecules. These soap molecules have a hydrophilic head and a hydrophobic tail. The hydrophilic head likes water and wants to interact with water, and the hydrophobic tail repels water. When the smoke is pushed out of the circle to make a bubble, it forms with the orientation of the hydrophilic heads pointing towards the water and the hydrocarbon tail of the soap molecules facing away from water. Once the bubble is created, there's a different pressure inside of the bubble than the outside. When the bubble tries to keep its shape, it's constantly trying to equilibrate. We will now explain to the college level students how this experiment works. So we all understand that different gases have different weights. In respects to the molecular formula of CO2 and O2, we notice that there's an extra carbon. This increases the weight of the entire molecule. So when the bubble is filled with carbon dioxide gas, it'll sink because it's heavier than oxygen gas. You can explain to the college student that you make carbon dioxide gas from putting the dry ice into the hot water. Dry ice sublimates into carbon dioxide at temperatures above negative 109.3 degrees Fahrenheit. To go in depth on how a bubble is made, we know that we have 3 layers, with 2 of those layers being soap layers. Soaps are made from a process called saponification, which yields a fatty acid salt and a glycerol. As mentioned before, these soaps have 2 components. We have a hydrophilic head and a hydrophobic tail. The head of the molecule is negatively charged or polar. The tail of the molecule is positively charged or nonpolar. The properties of the hydrophilic head and the hydrophobic tail determine its interaction with water. The hydrophilic part wants to make interactions with water, while the hydrocarbon tail does not want to make interactions with water. This forms the film. This soap film mentioned is on the circle of the tube. When smoke goes through the circle, it creates the bubble. As stated, a sphere is formed because it is the shape that minimizes the surface area, which is energetically favorable. The bubble film is trying to keep the pressure inside the bubble, therefore it's taking its shape. This concludes the explanation video for blue bubbles. Thank you for watching.